All right, it's throwback weekend. We're at Darlington, probably one of the most difficult tracks on the schedule that we go to, and we finally have all three series racing again. It feels like it's been months since we've had all three of the NASCAR series on track on a weekend. Recently it's just been one or sometimes most of the time two of them, but finally got all three of them back, so we're excited for that. I'm here with Rich, and we're going to be breaking down the NASCAR truck series slate for you guys right now, and then we'll also have our Xfinity video and our Cup video out as well. So any feedback, comments, questions you guys have, feel free to drop them down in the comments below, or you could find us over on Twitter. It's at FastCarsFM. You'll be able to pull up these spreadsheets yourselves, see kind of any last second lineup changes that we'll be putting in and things of that nature. And you can ask us questions over there as well. And also just wanted to say thank you guys. We had a goal last week to get over 100 subscribers, and we did that. So thank you guys so much for all the love and support that you've shown us so far this year. We're excited to continue to grow with you guys and, continue to put out some good content for you. So let's dive into Darlington here, Rich. So finally, we don't have a Kyle Busch slate, no KFB in this time in the trucks this time. So things are, quote unquote, back to normal. If you look at the lineup, there's a lot of good place differential guys starting further back in the field that I think can really add some good value to your line. But you also still want to try to pair those good place differential plays with, maybe one or two or maybe even three guys in your line who you think can, lead those laps and run those fast laps. If you can put together, a lineup that consists of both dominators with, high PD plays and some good value plays, I think you're going to be eating, in the right direction. But speaking of eating, this place eats tires. Every time there's a caution flag, I would imagine these guys are going to be coming down, putting 4 fresh Goodyear tires on. And this is also a really tough track, especially with no practice. So there's a lot of guys in the race who haven't raced here before or haven't raced in a long time. So not having any practice, I think, might hurt some of those guys a little bit. But anything else, Rich, from your end before we dive into the driver by driver breakdown?
No, let's get to it.
All right. So we'll start with you like we always do. This week in the 10K range, we got John Hunter Nemechek, Grant Enfinger, Parker Klingerman, and Sheldon Creed. What are your thoughts on the most expensive range?
Well, I love all these guys. They're all in play. John Hunter Nemechek starting on the pole, probably got the best chance to lead most of the early laps, maybe even the whole race. He's been the best car or best truck in the series outside of when Kyle Busch has been running. Not really on Enfinger too much this week. He's back in the better equipment, but everybody else, the plays around him are better or start farther back than he is, so not really interested in him too much. Parker Klingerman, I think he's in the Henderson racing truck.
Yeah.
I mean, he's kind of expensive, but he's starting in the back, so he offers pretty good PD place differential. So could see playing him. And Sheldon Creed. Sheldon Creed offers some solid PD starting 15th, but he does offer a little bit of dominator potential as well, because we know this truck is fast. He just hasn't really been able to get up to the front and show us the speed yet. I think he led a little bit, last week or the week before, last time the trucks were on the track. What are your thoughts on these guys?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's, most of these expensive guys are more place differential guys, I would say, especially Enfinger and Klingerman. I mean, Enfinger could lead laps, but it's probably unlikely. So for me, I always like to try to play the narrative out in my head of, okay, who's going to lead the early part? And if he's leading the early part, where can I get points, outside of the guy that's leading? And for me, I think John Hunter Nemechek is probably going to run away with this race, and maybe he's not. And if he's not, it's really going to hurt my lineup construction. But I'm going to be building around him as my main guy. And if I'm building around him as my main guy, I really want to focus all my other plays on really high place differential plays. So when I'm looking at the slate, I see Klingerman there. He starts 36th. Obviously, he's going to move forward. He's expensive, so maybe there's some other good place differential plays you can play in there as well. Sheldon Creed kind of is a place differential play and a dominator play at the same time. For whatever reason, if John Hunter gets into trouble or he has a speeding penalty or just misses the setup, I could see Sheldon Creed taking over. But for me, I'm going to be building around John Hunter Nemechek and then just trying to plug in as many place differential plays as possible. So that has me really interested in Klingerman, Creed, Krauss, Gilliland. I mean, some of these guys that are starting further back in the field that I'm just relying on John Hunter Nemechek to just basically, dominate this race. And then all my other guys, I just need them to move forward. That's kind of the approach that I'm taking. So for me, that makes it difficult for me to get an Austin Hill, a Zane Smith, a Matt Crafton, a Ben Rhodes into my line, especially if I'm chasing place differential. But I don't think these guys are bad plays at all. I mean, Austin Hill is really good at these intermediate tracks. Zane Smith is in the same equipment as Sheldon Creed, and he could, easily get up front or at least maintain his position. Matt Crafton's a veteran, so he's familiar with how this track races and how to, maintain his tires. Ben Rhodes is quietly having a pretty good season, from the truck regulars. Him and John Hunter Nemechek are the only two guys in the series that have actually won a race. And then there's Derek Krauss. Like, I love Derek Krauss starting 20th, especially with the narrative that I'm building of, John Hunter Nemechek dominates and then just plug in as many place differential plays as possible. And Krauss would fit that criteria for me. But I don't know if you're taking the same approach as I am, but what are your thoughts on Austin Hill down to Derek Krauss there?
Yeah, I mean, I really do like John Hunter Nemechek. Like I said earlier, he's been the fastest truck in this series all year long, outside of Kyle Busch. But if you're not going to play John Hunter Nemechek, you got to go after one of these other guys in this range because they have the next best chance to dominate this race in Austin Hill or Zane Smith or even Ben. I doubt Ben Rhodes, but anything can happen. But if I'm going to play somebody in this range that's not John Hunter Nemechek, it's probably going to be Austin Hill because he's starting there on the front row as well. And if Kyle Busch isn't in a truck race, the two guys that you're probably looking at to win so far this year are Austin Hill or John Hunter Nemechek. Even though Ben Rhodes has run well this year and he got the 2 early wins, he just hasn't shown as much speed at the other tracks as Austin Hill and John Hunter Nemechek. And then to touch on Derek Krauss, I love Derek Krauss this week. He's a little bit more expensive than he has been. Even last week, he was a little bit more expensive than he usually was. But even at $9,000, starting 20th, he can finish top 5 easily. So I have no problems playing Derek Krauss. And then going on down. Oh, you can go.
Okay, now I was going to say, if you want to just keep rolling through, by all means, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, and I really don't have any interest there at Stuart Friesen in 8,800. Just starts a little bit too high, and like the other players around him in price more. Bailey Curry impressed a lot of people last week. I was pretty high on him, even though I didn't get to talk in the videos last week. I was busy doing other stuff. But Bailey Curry, he's probably going to put up some impressive runs in this truck, and would not be surprised to see him in the top 10 at all. Love David Gilliland this week. He's starting 1 spot ahead of Klingerman, and he's $2,000 cheaper in a better truck. So I love David Gilliland this week, and then not really interested in Anchorman or Jordan Anderson too much.
Yeah, same here. I mean, especially with my lineup construction, I just want to get as many of these solid place differential plays as possible. When I look at this range, I'm going to have a ton of Bailey Curry. I'm going to have a ton of David Gilliland. Like Rich said, I think that was a really good point. Like, look at the price tag of David Gilliland and look at the price tag of Parker Klingerman. You're going to see a big difference there. And if you look at the starting position, you're only going to see one, place there. So they're basically starting right next to each other. And I'd probably even argue that David Gilliland's equipment in the 17 is probably better than Parker Klingerman's in the 75s. I mean, they're probably around the same, but I mean, they're both good plays, but if you wanted to save yourself some salary, I think David Gilliland is a solid option for you there. Stuart Friesen, he just starts a little bit too close to the front for me. Tyler Ankrum, he'll probably stall out at maybe 12th or 13th place. And at that price, you're going to need a little bit more from him. And Jordan Anderson, I don't really understand why he's $8,000. Like, yeah, he starts deep in the field, but he's probably only going to get up to maybe 25th. maybe 20th if like a lot of guys wreck, but I think there's some better plays that are cheaper than that price tag. So if you get to Chandler Smith, I mean, KBM has been probably the team to beat this year. He's in KBM equipment. He starts 8th, so he's probably a GPP only play. We've seen Chandler Smith wreck out a lot last year, and Darlington is a really tough track. So he's a risky play that could easily, kill your line if he does wreck or spin out or gets into trouble. Johnny Sauter probably starts a little bit too high. Same with Todd Gilliland. If I had to pick one, I'd probably would go with Todd Gilliland. We've seen him be able to maintain kind of that top 10 running, status basically, but starting 5th is really hard to get excited about plugging in your line. Ryan Truex is probably going to finish around where he starts. Spencer Davis could probably move forward some spots. Starting 28th, his truck's better than that. It's not that much better than that, but it at least has some, PD upside. Dawson Cram's too expensive. Timmy Hill's, he's in good equipment. I mean, this Hill truck is a lot better than people give it credit for, and he does a good job of just riding around clean and always being there at the end. So I could see him moving forward. And then Timothy Peters, I think, just starts around where he's going to finish. So I don't think there's any upside there.
Yeah, the only person really in this range that I like that much is probably Timmy Hill, and even at that point, he's going to have to finish top 20 to get 5 times upside. The only other person in this range that actually has a chance to probably get 5 times upside are the first 3: Chandler Smith, Johnny Sauter, and Todd Gilliland, and that's only if they can manage to get back up in the top 10 at the end of the race. I don't see them running around in the top 10, but there's probably going to be a late race restart that they could get good jumps and maybe sneak back up into the top 10 and have a solid finish. Moving on down, though, to the 6K range here. Corey Heim, he's making his first start in the Truck Series. The equipment is really solid, but he's not Kyle Busch. So, I mean, I'm probably not going to have too much of him, maybe 15%, 20%, just because of the truck he's in. But this track is really tough to learn, so he might drop back, into the 20s and just ride around just to learn the track. It's kind of tough to figure on Corey there. Moving down, Danny Bone, he's all right, just basically a PD play. You hope he doesn't wreck out and you move up a few spots. Tanner Gray, love Tanner Gray. He's in pretty decent equipment, and he seems to always be able to run around the top 15 for most of the race. And since he's only $6,600, I think he could even drop 2 spots and still pay off at that price. And not really interested in BJ McLeod too much, or Chase Purdy. I mean, the GMS equipment, I think that GMS or
yeah, he's in GMS. The Chase Purdy is
GMS. The GMS equipment is good, but Chase Purdy just hasn't been good. And then Ryan Reed's now in is he full time in this car? Going to be the rest of the year, or this truck?
I'm not sure if he's full time or not. I know he's bringing sponsorship over there, so I know he's at least running this weekend. I don't know if it's going to continue afterwards, but I mean, he's fired up and ready to go for this weekend. So yeah. He definitely has sponsorship in place.
It sucks that Rafael Lessard, with the pandemic and everything, wasn't able to gather up enough sponsorship to finish out the full season. Hopefully we see him back next year. But this is GMS equipment, and we know how good they are. So Ryan Reed could potentially pay off. I mean, my guess would be he probably doesn't finish higher than 15th, just because, Rafael Lessard's been in that truck all year and really hasn't done much either. So maybe I guess we'll get a good feeling of whether it's Lessard or whether it was the truck. And then Tate Fogelman starting 32nd. He offers a decent amount of PD upside, just as long as he doesn't wreck out or something like that.
Yeah, for this range, there's not really anyone that like screams, off and jumps off the page of like, oh, this guy is so much better than everybody else. But I think Chase Purdy we've seen, this week after week where it's a pretty cheap price tag and people get roped into like, hey, the equipment's really good, especially the guys he's priced around, and his upside's higher than other guys, but he's just constantly disappoints for, one reason or another. Ryan Reed is also in the same equipment as Purdy. He starts a little bit further, to the front of the field than Purdy does. And Reed has been running, some races recently, but I mean, this is going to be his first time in that GMS truck without any practice at arguably, one of the toughest tracks. So I just don't know if he can finish much higher than where he starts. And then I would guess the guy I would like the most in this range is probably Tate Fogelman, but he starts 32nd, so it's hard to imagine him, doing any worse than that. But it's also hard to imagine him, finishing like 18th. Like he has to really have a career day. So if you're building a lot of lines, I'd probably just sprinkle in these guys. I wouldn't go crazy overweight on any of them. And then if you get down to this punt range, and I haven't built any lines yet, so I don't know if I have to go this low or not. But if I do, the guy I probably like the most is going to be Carson Hosevar there. We've been playing a lot of him this year, even starting, 10th or 11th, and now that he starts 14th. It's a little bit safer, and the price tag allows you to really get some of those solid guys. And then I guess, if you're making the argument to play Tate Fogelman, if you can't get there for whatever reason, price-wise, Spencer Boyd or Chris Wright, I don't think it's going to kill you. Like, it's hard to imagine all three of them have good days, but I would imagine like one of them is going to have a decent day. So, and they all start pretty deep in the field. So if one of them can finish like 20th or something, that's going to give you some good place differential points, especially at that price. But is there any punts down here that kind of stand out more so to you than others?
Mainly Carson Hosevar. He's been running really well this year and consistently running in the top 15. So I got no problem playing him at all this week. Honestly, he might be in my core for most of my lines. And I'm going to touch on Haley Deegan. This is her first time at Darlington. So while she has been running well and running inside the top 20 and ran really well last week, it's tough to imagine her having a great run this week at a really tough track. So even at that price tag, as cheap as she is, it's tough to imagine her paying that off. And then, like you said, mainly just I wouldn't ever have too much of these guys down here. The only one I'd probably go a little overweight on is Carson Hosevar, just because I feel the most confident in him. But I'll probably just end up sprinkling in a few of these other guys into my 20 max.
All right, so that's going to do it for the Truck Series video. As always, thank you guys so much for all the support, and any questions, comments, drop them down in the comments below, and we will catch you on the Xfinity video.